Welcome to the Executive Coaching Podcast, where executive coach Alicia Cowan will discuss leadership topics and coaching solutions to tackle the most difficult problems that keep you from leading your team to success.
Hey there, leaders. It's Alicia Cowan. It's January 25th as I am recording this. So welcome to episode number 58 of the Executive Coaching Podcast. And I will tell you, it is cold in the Southeast. Last weekend, we went out to New Orleans for a cheer competition for my youngest daughter, and she did great. She placed third out of 7. The top 3 was super close and all within a point of each other. So we're super proud of her. She did great. We also ate some amazing food. New Orleans, of course, being known for all their restaurants. We went to a place called Brennan's, which is like a New Orleans staple and the home of the Bananas Foster. So, of course, we had to have it. We went to a place called Cochon and an Italian spot called Gianna's, which both were amazing. And then I drank Nova coffee pretty much every day. It was amazing. So we were lucky enough to get out of New Orleans right before that epic snowstorm hit. And we are safe and sound back in Tampa, but it is cold here. So I know you're maybe in a part of the country that is way colder, but it has been kind of cold and gloomy all week. So finally started getting warm towards this weekend. And we're taking a little bit of a breather in between cheer competitions before another one next weekend. And so I'm here with you wanting to get out what I think is a really important message. I have been talking to you on this podcast about performance reviews and feedback conversations for the past few weeks. And I want to talk today about playing the long game and how you follow up after tough feedback conversations. We've all been there. So when we think about leading and working up the nerve to have that like really tough conversation, you prep, you deliver the feedback, and then what? A lot of leaders are like, phew, okay, it's done. It's over. I can move on. And you want to check it off your list and really just move forward and move on. But the magic really comes in this follow-up conversation. And so today I'm going to talk about why it's so important and how to make those conversations stick, how you can like build trust, and how you can actually lead change if you follow up. These tough feedback conversations are not one and done. They are just a starting point. And I know some of you are like not thrilled with me saying that, but if you don't follow up and you're not closing up this conversation, you could leave it wide open for potential miscommunication, potential mistrust, and just these potential missed opportunities between you and your direct report or a skip level or a peer, whoever you're delivering this feedback to. Okay. So let's dive right in. And I want to talk first about why follow-up matters. So I talk a lot to people that are both delivering reviews and receiving reviews or receiving these tough feedback conversations. And I hear it a lot on the receiving end. Without the follow-up, the person on the other end of this conversation is, at times, they're just left with like this big question mark. They're left out there just kind of hanging. And what can sometimes happen is they start to think thoughts like, I wonder if they really meant it. And or like, do they even care? Because if they're not following up with me, was it really that big of a deal or really that important? So they can either minimize it or think that it's not that big of a deal. Someone that might be really have taken it to heart and they're trying to work on improving, they sometimes have questions like, am I doing enough? Is this good enough for them? And then what happens is I see these thoughts just like fester, and they cause a lot bigger problems and bigger issues because they're just not addressed quickly and swiftly. And it's really simple. There's very easy ways to do this. And so the benefit of these follow-ups, just to reinforce what I'm saying here, is number one, it reinforces the accountability piece. By following up, you just say, hey, I did mean what I said, and I'm also here to support you to get there, because I'm not just going to disappear just because I gave you some feedback. I'm not going to make it awkward and just like give you the silent treatment. And if you avoid it, that's what can happen. People see that it's like either uncomfortable for you or that's just not that important. So number one benefit, reinforcing accountability. Two, it also builds trust between you and this person. It shows you actually do value your growth and you're here for it. You're not just going through the motions. You're actually going to show up and show support. And then three, it helps you get results, both you and for the person, right? This is where the action really shows up and takes place. It's how that feedback turns into action because there is further conversation about it, right? So that's why follow-up is important and why it really matters. And as a coach, I help people with this. A lot of times people don't have like a simple, structured, like one-on-one that they love. Or maybe they need a sounding board to help understand what their intentions are or to clarify where their gaps are in some of the follow-up efforts. And so I help people with this type of work all the time. A lot of times it's as simple as putting a very simple but structured one-on-one on the calendar, okay? So just some food for thought. So let's talk through the second portion of this and let's talk through the art of the follow-up. So I'm taking you through a couple different steps, 4 simple steps to be exact, about how you can follow up in a really simple way. So this first step is just during the feedback conversation that you're going to have is to just set the stage that follow-up will happen and it's going to occur. So you don't have to wait until after the conversation to tell them or decide that you will follow up. During that feedback conversation, just lay it all out. And it's as simple as this. You say something as simple as like, okay, let's talk about this in our one-on-one in 2 weeks, just to check it back in, to see how things are going, to talk about where you need help. And then that means it's an action plan. It's not just feedback that just floats out there into the void. I also think it's really important that you deliver this message and then quickly, just when you go back to business and you return to normalcy, basically like if you have maybe potentially an emotional conversation, it's okay to acknowledge it. As long as it's a professional interaction, you don't want to like avoid the person afterwards. You want to return to normalcy after you hold that space for them and the emotions that they have, and then go back to normal. And what I mean by that is just shows them that it's okay to have that emotional conversation. Again, as long as it's professional interaction, but to let them know there's not going to be any negative repercussions for having it. We're going to go back to normal. We're going to get back to business, and I'm still here to support you. Okay, so set that stage. That's step one. The second one, I think it's important to customize your approach to the person. And I talk a lot about this with leaders and how they lead and how do they maintain their own leadership style, but they tailor it to the person that they're having this conversation with, right? So there is a way that you can remain authentic to you and also tailor your approach. So here's what I mean by that. If you have someone that you're interacting with and they're like somebody that's like super action oriented, they love to take those steps and they love to like really get moving on action, then during this conversation, you can focus on measurable progress. So either what tasks they've completed, what milestones they reach, what KPIs they've hit, right? You can really focus and hone in on that. If someone on the other end of this potentially is more of an emotional processor, like they really like need time to feel the feelings, it's okay in that approach to ask how they're feeling about the change, how they're feeling about the feedback that you delivered, and if they need any additional support from you. And again, you can absolutely think about different approaches as well, but I wanted to give you at least 2 examples to think about. It's okay to, again, maintain your leadership style and approach a person in a way that you know will be effective for them. Okay, step 3. Here's the big one. You want to focus on progress during these follow-up conversations, not perfection. First off, no such thing as perfection. But the follow-up conversation, this is not about trying to play like a gotcha situation. It's not about being nitpicky. It's not about trying to catch them in their slip-ups. It's not about micromanagement. It's about celebrating wins, calling out and identifying any roadblocks that they might have that you can maybe lift some obstacles away for them and helping them keep momentum going. Okay. It's like, this is what leadership's all about. You're like being this cheerleader and the support, right? You can ask a great coaching question. Well, what's working? What is still challenging for you? And how can I help you? Simple questions to like really get things going. And again, focus on where they've made progress, not looking for 100% perfection here. Remember, human behavior is sometimes very slow moving and can take some time to change, and that's okay. So that's step 3. Step 4, last one here, make it a two-way conversation. I know I said this a lot when I was talking about delivering feedback and how to prep for it. Now I'm going to say it because it's so important. I'm going to say it again. Feedback is never a one-way street. You have to use the follow-up conversation to ask for feedback on your approach, ask them how they're thinking, how they're feeling, etc. And this actually helps build trust and really opens the door to have this strong line of communication between the two of you. And if you actively listen, it shows, again, you really care. Okay. So, hopefully these 4 steps help. And a lot of times what I do as a coach is I help leaders identify either their leadership style or their communication style and how to do that adaptation for different team members. I also help people thinking through like how to structure some of these conversations. Some people get stuck on just not knowing what to say or what to ask. And I help be an accountability partner to help people follow through on what commitments they've made and how they're leading their teams. Okay. Now let's talk about a couple of things that I want you to think about avoiding. There's some common pitfalls that I see. So pitfall number 1, what I see out there is just forgetting to follow up altogether. And I know that's the whole point of this podcast, right? But I see it a lot where again, people want to move on. And I know, especially, now in this day and age, people are always, it seems like eternally just busy. So they just forget or it just slips their mind. And there's nothing that screams like, I do not care, like skipping this follow-up. If you say, I want to check in with you and follow up, you got to do it. You can put it into your calendar, you set a reminder. If you have an assistant, you have them remind you, whatever it takes, tattoo it on your hands, whatever you need to do. Don't forget. Again, it is epic in building trust. Pitfall that I see number 2 is sometimes leaders, they turn in this follow-up conversation into a micromanagement session. So follow-up does not mean hovering and micromanaging. If you use this follow-up to check in every hour or to nitpick or every detail is having to come across your desk, it actually can potentially do more harm than good. So the point is, especially at a senior leader level, you want to keep it high level. You want to focus on progress. You want to focus on support. And if there are certain details that you need to know, that's okay. But it doesn't mean you have to hover in order to get them accomplished. Okay. All right. Number 3, the pitfall that I see sometimes is that people make the follow-up all about you. Sometimes leaders just use follow-ups as a chance to just like rehash everything that they had as a part of that initial conversation, or they just want to really double down on the points. And you have to remember, it's about the other person on the side of the conversation, their growth, their success, and how you can help them. I was just coaching a leader this week, and a lot of their conversation that they were reiterating to me as they were describing what they talked to with their direct report about was all one-sided. It was all what they said to them and how they wanted to get their message across. And ultimately what I found, it was like, it was a strong desire to want to control the other person and wanted them to change. Ultimately, they wanted the other person to behave in a way that they thought was the correct way to behave and not about how that person was actually showing up and trying to understand why. And so that's what I encourage you to do is just at times we get wrapped up in our own emotions and we don't lead with curiosity. We really, again, like I love that point where we just want to double down on our own points rather than really understand why this is happening. Not just because we just want to understand the why, but it's like understanding the root cause then helps us understand how to address it, how we can step in and support. All right. So that's pitfall 3. Don't make it all about you. And again, this is where coaching can help. As a coach, I like to come in with this neutral perspective to help leaders avoid this like micromanaging or this like overly bearing or tightly controlling personality type that when they want to hold on to, deciding the other person needs to change for them to feel some type of way. And so that's how coaching can help. And I also help leaders balance. How do they help people be accountable with a sense of autonomy so that it doesn't come off in a way that is overly controlling? All right. We're going to close out here in this last portion and talk through some examples and some practical tips for you. So, two different coaching examples I have for you, real life examples that I've seen. So, once I saw a really high performer and great at her role, had been a great individual contributor, got a really big team. And her feedback when she first acquired the team, she was traveling a lot all around the country, visiting people and delivering feedback that just wasn't being well received by the team. She came across a little too harsh. And so that feedback was delivered. But here's what happened. And what's important to note is that the follow-up conversations with her was to really understand and get curious about why she felt the need to manage in this way. And the conversations were not, again, it wasn't just like micromanaging her about her tone and her feedback that she was delivering, which again came as the initial situation. But really what was meant to do was the follow-up conversations is to really understand and help her get to the root cause of it and coach her on what her approach was and how she was building relationships. And so by doing so and having those follow-up conversations, we helped her now have a way more successful approach with her team, have way stronger relationships with her team, and end up in a way that is driving way better results than she was previously. The second example I'm going to give is I once coached a leader that really was delivering a lot of feedback and tough feedback about missing deadlines. This one can be very widely applicable. I hear this a lot. Coaching leaders and their direct reports that miss delivering things on time. And the follow-up feedback this person was delivering was not about the deadlines. It was about helping the associate, setting them up for success, giving them better tools and setting better, clear priorities. Because what was happening was it wasn't just like follow-up one-on-ones just to beat the deadlines into this person and make them happen. The person was struggling with their time management. This person was struggling with, they needed help with their workload and taking workload off the plate. They needed help to learn how to use some tools to be more efficient. They also needed to be more collaborative. They needed to ask some other people for help and to delegate to other people. And by really digging in and listening and learning what some of the problems were, rather than just trying to micromanage the deadlines to the deadline, the productivity actually skyrocketed and this person's behavior shifted in a way that was great because they were getting the support that they need. And someone actually did the follow-up conversations to listen and to learn what was going on rather than just continue harping on the deadlines. And so that's what I want to let you know is it's so important to get to the root cause of like what's going on for someone. When you have that initial feedback, typically there's more to the onion to peel away to help them out. So my practical tips that I'm going to share with before we close this out, make sure you time this conversation correctly. Follow up at regular intervals. So whether it's weekly, biweekly, whatever the cadence that works for you, it depends, of course, on your situation, but make sure it's consistent. 2, you can keep things short and sweet. Like I said, I know y'all are busy. So sometimes you don't even need like this full-blown meeting, a quick stand-up, a quick chat, an email check-in, and all of this can work just fine for different situations, and it doesn't need be this big to do. And then 3rd, take notes. Document the progress for you and your direct report. If there's some big changes happening, track the progress in a shared document. It keeps everybody on the same page, keeps everybody accountable. Okay? All right. So that's what I have for you today. So the key points here today about follow-up conversations, they are where you build trust. They are where you will drive accountability. And then you're going to turn these tough feedback conversations into results. And so I'd love for you As you're listening to this, think about a tough conversation that you might have had recently and ask yourself the question, have I followed up on this? And if not, how do I want to follow up on this, and what plan can I make to follow up? What am I going to check up on, and how am I going to support someone's progress? Okay. These tough conversations, they are just the start. That is both the good and the bad news. So when you follow up with this true intention that's authentic and care, you show your team that as a leader, you are in this for the long haul and for the long game. And this is where your true leadership shines. It's where you walk the walk, you talk the talk, you do it all, and you show up in a way, again, even if it's imperfect, for the person to show them that you're there. Okay. All right. And again, as a leader, this is what we do. We help serve as an ongoing partner to help leaders reflect. How are things going? What support do they need? What long-term goals can they help stay focused on, even when these follow-ups feel like really challenging and really uncomfortable at times? So if you need help, as always, I am here to help you. So let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear how you're approaching your feedback conversations. You can totally send me your stories, send me your questions. I'd love to hear how it's going for you and what's worked for you. And if you want help, as I mentioned, you can reach out to me. My website, EliciaCowanCoaching.com, where I'm here for you. It's ElisiaKeown coaching.com. And I appreciate you so much for tuning in. And I will talk to you next time, leaders. Thank you so much. Go get them. Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Executive Coaching Podcast with Alicia Cowan. If you're ready to have an executive coach who's ready to help you lead your team to success, then book an introductory call at aliciacowancoaching.com/call.